with the song Waiting on a Wish from the soundtrack of Disney's Snow White, Rachel Zegler.
I mean, yeah, sure. I had no idea what I was auditioning for when I auditioned. So it's a kind of a hilarious question to say, like, what drew you
Once
to the...
upon a time, Rachel Zegler was Hollywood's chosen one. Handpicked by Spielberg, hailed as the next great leading lady. But now, she's the internet's favorite villain. Her name trending for all the wrong reasons. From public meltdowns to cancel campaigns, from Disney's Golden Girl to theater stage exile, the rise and fall of Rachel Zegler might just be one of the most dramatic Hollywood flameouts in recent memory. And the craziest part? She still doesn't think she did anything wrong. It was the kind of overnight success that most actors can only dream about. Rachel Zegler went from posting cover songs on YouTube to being handpicked by Steven Spielberg himself to lead his West Side Story remake.
I'm so happy he can sing.
And he was like, we have to go back and do it again. We're like, yes.
You have a way with words.
No. She wasn't just a newcomer. She was being introduced as the next big thing. Hollywood couldn't get enough. Award shows invited her to present. Fashion brands lined up. Rachel was poised to be the industry's new darling. Fresh, diverse, outspoken, and gifted. With one role, she seemed to embody the future of Hollywood. Then came the crown jewel. Disney cast her as Snow White in their highly anticipated live-action remake. A billion-dollar franchise, a beloved classic. The stakes were high, but Rachel was riding high. She was barely 20 years old and already at the top of the game. But what started as a fairy tale began unraveling the moment she opened her mouth. In interviews, she didn't just promote the film, she criticized it. She called the original Snow White creepy and weird. She said the prince was a guy who literally stalks her and laughed off the romance as outdated and unnecessary.
Just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to.
She insisted her version would be a leader who didn't dream about true love, and social media exploded. Longtime Disney fans felt blindsided. Critics called her comments arrogant and disrespectful. TikToks mocking her tone and expressions gained millions of views. Even her supporters began to shift uncomfortably. It wasn't just the message, it was the delivery. Smirks, eye rolls, and an air of superiority that rubbed audiences the wrong way. And the backlash wasn't just noise, it snowballed. People started calling for boycotts. Memes labeled her the real villain. The internet began treating her not as a rising star, but as a punchline. Meanwhile, Disney panicked. The backlash surrounding Snow White was so severe that it reportedly caused them to pause several other live-action remakes. For a company built on nostalgia,
after
Rachel's
the failure of
approach and
Snow
the
White
fallout
at
that
the box
followed
office,
was a nightmare.
AF Post, and you can
But
thank
here's the
Rachel
twist.
Zegler and Gal Gadot.
This wasn't just a PR disaster. It wasn't some unlucky misunderstanding. Rachel Zegler wasn't being sabotaged. She was holding the match. In most Hollywood press cycles, actors are coached within an inch of their lives. Say the right things, praise the project, keep it light. But Rachel Zegler seemed determined to rewrite the playbook. And not in a charming, refreshing way. In a self-sabotaging way. During the press run for Snow White, Rachel didn't just discuss the film, she dissected it with a smirk. She called the 1937 original weird.
Cast somebody for Snow White whose entire personality on a marketing tour for the movie is, I hate.
Openly mocked the romantic storyline and repeatedly declared, this isn't going to be about true love. She spoke about how her version of Snow White would be a strong, independent leader who didn't need saving. Sure, empowerment is good, but when you're promoting a film built on nostalgia, fan devotion, and decades of tradition, mocking the very foundation of it isn't bold, it's reckless. And Rachel didn't say it once, she said it over and over. Across interviews, panels, and social media clips, her commentary kept escalating. She spoke with a confidence that felt less like conviction and more like contempt, as if she was doing audiences a favor by deconstructing the fairy tale.
Hates when I win, that despite my flaws and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every
The tone was smug. The delivery was sarcastic. And the audience wasn't laughing with her. TikTok lit up like a forest fire. Clip after clip was posted of Rachel rolling her eyes, giving snarky commentary, or laughing off criticisms. She hates the movie she's in, one user wrote. This is the most ungrateful star Disney's ever cast. The phrase unbearable started appearing next to her name, everywhere. Commentators began to wonder, was this arrogance or sabotage? Was she trying to tank the movie on purpose? Or did she genuinely not understand how her words were landing? And then the dominoes started falling. The Snow White remake, once one of Disney's biggest upcoming bets, suddenly became radioactive. The release date was pushed back.
Most of these live-action remakes is actually still missing the mark. Plus, with the recent box office disaster of the live-action Snow White,
Disney began delaying or scrapping other live-action remakes altogether, a ripple effect they hadn't seen since the Mulan controversy. Some insiders claimed Disney execs were furious behind closed doors. But in public? Silence. They didn't defend Rachel. They didn't clarify her comments. They just went quiet, which only made things worse. The silence became a vacuum, and the internet filled it with theories, memes, and call-outs. YouTubers began compiling Zegler meltdown montages. Reddit threads dissected her entire career. And every week, it seemed like a new clip went viral. Each one painting Rachel as tone-deaf, out of touch, and uninterested in the very fans she needed.
Welcome to the studio, actress Rachel Zegler, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
That was some great acting right there.
And here's the twist. Through it all, Rachel didn't back down. She didn't clarify. She didn't apologize. She kept doing interviews, kept making statements, and kept doubling down. It was as if she believed the backlash would pass, that her version of the story would win out in the end. But in the court of public opinion, the verdict was already in. Rachel Zegler wasn't just in hot water, she was boiling in it. And then came the reveal, something that turned the backlash into a conversation about mental health, accountability, and whether or not Rachel was finally starting to feel the heat. As the backlash grew louder and the headlines turned hostile, Rachel Zegler made a surprising admission. Not through a tweet, not during a press conference, but in a quiet interview with ID magazine. She revealed that throughout the controversy, she had been regularly seeing a psychiatrist.
Up to ID magazine about the whole Disney ordeal, saying that she relied on mental health professionals to help her through it. Quote,
My freaking psychiatrist has seen me through all of it, she said. The statement was raw, honest, and to some, deeply relatable. But it also opened the door to a new kind of controversy. Was this Rachel being transparent? Or was it another way to shift the blame? Because while she spoke about the emotional toll, there was something noticeably missing. Any sign of personal responsibility. No apology, no reflection, no specific regrets. Just a vague reference to how difficult things had been and how even her doctor confirmed it. What you're going through isn't normal. She later added that she was now taking medication for anxiety and described it as a game changer. She said she had reached a point where she just wasn't functioning and needed something to help her feel more confident moving through the world.
has seen me through all of it. She says the doctor reminded her, what you're going through isn't normal. And she says that sentence did such one.
And while mental health should always be taken seriously, the timing and the framing raised eyebrows. Because this wasn't just a bad week online. This was a controversy sparked by her own words, repeated over months. The backlash didn't come from nowhere. It came from her interviews, her posts, and her tone. And now, instead of addressing any of it directly, she was redirecting the story toward her struggles without ever acknowledging the damage done along the way. Some fans sympathized. She's under pressure, she's young, she's figuring it out. But others weren't convinced. This isn't about mental health, it's about accountability. And that was the problem. Rachel's words painted her as someone caught in a storm, not someone who helped create it. The conversation shifted from controversy to compassion.
up to ID magazine about the whole Disney ordeal, saying that she relied on mental health professionals to help her through it. Quote,
But it skipped the step where she actually took responsibility. Even more frustrating for some was how she continued to double down on her image. She spoke about choosing positivity and light over negativity. She said she wakes up every day feeling lucky and grateful. She insisted she didn't play the victim, even though many felt that's exactly what she was doing. It was a carefully polished message, one that sounded good on paper, but left a bitter taste when compared to her online history. Because while she now spoke about kindness and healing, it wasn't that long ago that she was lashing out. Not just at critics, but at fellow celebrities. And that's when people started looking back and uncovering a pattern that went much deeper than just a bad interview. While Rachel Zegler has recently spoken about kindness, empathy, and emotional healing, the internet has a long memory.
But they're scaling back the Hollywood premiere of the film. Kinsey, why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler.
And it didn't take much digging to uncover a pattern that tells a very different story. Long before Snow White backlash, Rachel had already made waves, not for her acting, but for the way she went after people online. And this wasn't playful sarcasm or light criticism. This was scorched earth commentary. In 2019, she labeled actor Jeremy Renner as a racist, sexist, transphobic garbage monster, claiming he disrespected the deaf community. The post came during the rollout of the Hawkeye series, when online discourse was already intense, and Rachel's statement poured gasoline on the fire. She didn't stop there. She took aim at Gina Carano, an actress known for political controversy, and accused her of bigotry.
Controversy that he had found himself in. However, she was in no way respectful about it, as she made sure,
joining the wave of public pressure that eventually got Carano removed from The Mandalorian. Rachel also encouraged her followers to wear pronoun pins and declared, "Pronouns are validating, pronouns are cool," a message that, while affirming for many, was also delivered with a tone that critics found condescending and aggressive. Then came her comments about Kyle Rittenhouse, calling him a 17-year-old white supremacist. That statement alone could have landed her in legal trouble, and while no lawsuits came, the backlash was swift. Viewers pointed out that Rachel had millions of followers and a major platform, one that she seemed to use more for condemnation than for conversation. The deeper people looked, the more examples surfaced, calling for the defunding of the police while working in an industry that can afford private security. Posting messages like Trump supporters and Trump himself should never know peace. Lashing out at those who disagreed with her politically, painting entire groups as hateful or ignorant. And here's the irony. Rachel often spoke about love, positivity, and lifting others up. But her online history revealed someone quick to label, cancel, and condemn.
Why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR nightmare.
And now you better have a good reason to get people to the theaters. And this.
It created a kind of emotional whiplash. The same person urging the world to be kinder was also publicly tearing people down, without hesitation. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a habit. And when her critics pointed it out, Rachel didn't engage. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just moved on, as if those posts never existed. But the internet doesn't forget. And as people connected the dots between her past behavior and her recent controversies, a narrative began to take shape. One that was a lot harder to dismiss. This wasn't about mental health. It wasn't about being misunderstood. It was about a star who spent years throwing punches and was now stunned when the world punched back. With Hollywood seemingly closing its doors, Rachel Zegler found herself returning to her roots. Live theater.
Hottest ticket on the West End, but Evita's show-stopping musical moment can be seen for free. Rachel.
For some, this felt like a graceful pivot. For others, it looked like a quiet exile. She took on the lead role in Evita on the London stage, embracing a classic role in a production far removed from the spotlight of Disney or Hollywood blockbusters. But even there, controversies seemed to follow. In what was meant to be a heartfelt moment, Rachel sang "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" from a balcony, a spontaneous performance intended perhaps to capture attention and generate buzz for the play. Instead, it drew complaints. Paying audience members were furious that passersby got a glimpse of the show for free. Online debates flared. Was it a publicity stunt? A marketing tactic? Or just another tone-deaf moment?
Star Rachel Zegler is unbelievably charmless in public. Studios really need to go back to what they originally did, which was tell your stars to shut up and not say things.
To Rachel, it may have felt empowering. To critics, it was another example of her inability to read the room. And the whispers from behind the curtain? Even louder. Rumors began surfacing from inside the theater community. Murmurs of a diva attitude, of someone who saw herself as above her castmates. Someone who treated the stage as her personal kingdom. Stories began circulating of backstage tension, unprofessional conduct, and a my way or no way approach that rubbed colleagues the wrong way. Was it jealousy? Maybe. But given her public persona, the stories didn't seem all that surprising. Because if there's one thing consistent about Rachel Zegler's rise and fall, it's this.
You're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. You should shut up and do the job.
There's a pattern of condescension, of someone who rarely second-guesses herself, and who sees criticism as an attack rather than an opportunity to grow. And this isn't just media spin. This is the version of Rachel that's emerged again and again. Not just in Hollywood circles, but in grassroots communities like theater, where collaboration and humility are everything. For someone who preaches kindness, the stories behind the scenes suggest something else. A star who demands respect, but doesn't always give it. A performer who thrives on applause, but stumbles when the spotlight turns critical. And that's why her pivot to the stage isn't just a new chapter. It might be her only remaining option. Despite everything, the backlash, the feuds, the fall from Hollywood's A-list, Rachel
Disney, she has to go.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry.
Rachel Zegler continues to push a message of light, positivity, peace. In interviews, she speaks calmly and confidently about choosing happiness. She insists she refuses to let negativity shape her life. She's even said, I think a victim mindset is a choice. I don't choose it. And to the casual observer, it sounds admirable, like someone who's been through a storm and decided to rise above it. But for many, the messaging rings hollow. Not because people don't believe in positivity, but because they've seen the other side of Rachel too many times. The biting tweets, the call-outs, the political tirades, the unapologetic takedowns of actors, fans, even entire groups of people.
Being kind and, using the voice that's hidden in your heart.
And using stories that are generational.
When someone says they reject negativity, yet has a history of launching public attacks on anyone they disagree with, the words start to feel more like branding than belief. And that's where Rachel seems stuck, between who she thinks she is and what the public now sees. There's a growing sense that her positivity persona isn't just an outlook, it's a mask. A carefully crafted image built to deflect criticism and recast herself as the misunderstood heroine in her own story. One who didn't fall from grace, but was unfairly dragged down by the cruelty of the internet. But the truth, most of her critics weren't trolls or strangers, they were fans. Former supporters, people who once rooted for her and now feel let down.
I think it would be silly. I think we need someone to make us laugh, Yeah, I think
And while Rachel talks about growth and self-love, she rarely talks about humility or the people she's hurt along the way. She paints herself as a beacon of peace. But when you dig through her timeline, what you find isn't peace at all. You find conflict. Patterned, consistent, predictable. And in the age of receipts, it's no longer enough to say, I choose happiness. People want to see it. They want real change, not rehearsed quotes. They want self-awareness, not rebranding. Because no matter how bright the smile or polished the statement, if the behavior doesn't change, the audience won't either. Rachel Zegler didn't announce she was leaving Hollywood. She didn't need to. The silence said it for her. After months of controversy, the once promising starlet quietly faded from blockbuster headlines.
Well, guys, it seems like Disney might be finally learning their lesson. You all know that we followed the Snow White fiasco from the announcement.
The Snow White marketing machine hit pause. No new studio deals were announced. And while Disney never said the words out loud, the message was clear. The experiment had failed. So Rachel pivoted, not to another major film, but to something smaller, safer, theater. In London, she took on Evita, then The Sound of Music. Soon after, she signed onto a low-budget indie film that so far barely has a trailer. These weren't passion projects. These were career resets. A retreat from the harsh lights of Hollywood into the relative calm of the stage, where the scrutiny is lighter and the audience more forgiving. But make no mistake.
Just protecting me. No. He works here and he's helping me because crowds are...
This wasn't her grand design. This was damage control. The internet didn't believe the story that she chose to step back. They saw it for what it likely was, a soft exile. Studios stopped calling, major roles dried up, and Rachel, still determined to perform, found the only spotlight still shining, on the smaller stage. And in many ways, theater suits her. The big emotions, the dramatic flair, the solo spotlight, she thrives in it. But even here, the whispers follow. Critics wonder, is she here to rebuild or just regroup? Will she take this time to reflect, to grow, to prove she can change? Or is this just the eye of the storm before the next controversy erupts?
Rachel Zegler is a terrible choice for Snow White. Gal Gadot, who plays the queen, the first problem is that she's the evil queen.
Because if there's one thing Rachel's history has shown, it's that she doesn't stay quiet for long. And in a world where every quote, every tweet, every slip is recorded and remembered, silence might be the only move she has left. For now, Rachel Zegler is no longer the next big thing. She's the cautionary tale of what happens when talent and ego collide, and no one's willing to say the words that matter most. I messed up, and I'm ready to change. Rachel Zegler's story isn't just about a few bad interviews or a botched press tour. It's about what happens when a rising star climbs fast, but refuses to look down. She had the talent. She had the platform. She had the golden ticket. And somehow, she turned it into a slow-motion implosion. Not because she was silenced, but because she couldn't stop talking. Not because she was attacked, but because she kept throwing punches and calling it peace. Now she finds herself in a strange limbo. Too controversial for the spotlight, too proud to admit fault, and too committed to a carefully crafted persona to drop the act and simply be real. But here's the truth. Hollywood doesn't hold grudges. It moves on. And the audience, they're watching, waiting, not for perfection, but for honesty. If Rachel Zegler ever truly wants a second act, it won't come from another viral quote, a flashy performance, or a new role on stage. It'll come from a moment of real humility, the kind you can't rehearse. Until then, she may keep singing to balconies and preaching positivity online. But the fairy tale is over. And the mirror on the wall, it's not asking who's the fairest anymore. It's asking who's still listening.